Look at Isaiah chapter 38, and we're going to begin reading in verse 9. The Bible said the writing of Hezekiah, king of Judah, when he had been sick and was recovered of his sickness. So you see that what it says? The writing of Hezekiah. Now verse 10. I said in the cutting off of my days, I shall go to the gates of the grave. I am deprived of the residue of my years. I said, I shall not see the Lord, even the Lord, in the land of the living. I shall behold man no more with the inhabitants of the world. Mine age is departed and is removed from me as a shepherd's tent. I have cut off like a weaver my life. He will cut me off with a pining sickness. From day even to night wilt thou make an end of me. Our focus is in verse 10, which is the title of our message tonight. I've said in the cutting off of my days, I shall go to the gates of the grave. I am deprived of the residue of my years. His sickness is announced suddenly. He has a sickness, and we know that from the Bible teaches us that Hezekiah not only was a great man, he's 39 years old at the time. He has a boil and some kind of illness. And God tells Isaiah, I want you to go in and tell Hezekiah that he needs to get his house in order because he's going to die. Now, the death sentence comes very quick. When you look at this portion of Scripture, notice what it says in verse 10. I said in the cutting off of my days, I should go to the gates of the grave. I am what? Deprived. I am deprived. In other words, I'm cut off. This is restricted for me. At 39 years old, why would it be so shocking to get that kind of announcement at 39? Why? Really, in reality, we don't expect to die in short time, do we? We hope that we're going to die at 99.9% age and die in my sleep, at my home, after I just had a meal of, what do we want to eat? What do we? Yeah. See, they're like-minded. We're going to eat filet mignon, cooked medium rare, because you don't want it any other way. You kill your steak when how you do eat it like it's like a piece of board, I don't know. But anyway, and then you eat like a couple of cupcakes. Yeah, amen, right? Have a nice cold glass of milk and some chocolate cookies. Now, one time, my friend, I have to be careful because he may see this one day. I don't want to slander him, but I'm just going to tell the truth about him, so I'm not going to slander him. Anyway, I would watch him, and he would drink a swig of milk, and then he would dip his... How do you dip cookies in milk, man? You want them crunchy. So anyway, he dips his cookies in his milk, and then he takes a bite of a pickle at the same time. Brother, that's like eating a sardine peanut butter and jelly sandwich. That's just something wrong with that, right? But what's so shocking about receiving a death sentence at 39 years old is, man, we don't expect to be cut off that quick. Now, he mentions this. He says, notice what it says in the verse. I said in the cutting off of my days. Then he mentions the residue of my years. But here's the brevity of the brevity of life as expressed in verse 12. Look at verse 12. Mine age is departed, so he's 39 years old, and is removed from me as a shepherd's tent. So he looks at that as, man, it's just like the tent's put up and it's gone. It's just like you go camping. You put the tent up, it doesn't take any time long, you pack up and it's gone. Now, when you're camping, you feel like we've been here a long time, especially when you go camping in the snow, right, Brother Queen? So you camp there. That's terrible. I made my mind up. I'm never going to do that again. I'm not camping in the snow. Anyway, so you put the tent up. You feel like, man, we've been here forever. I praise the Lord for it. And sometimes you need that kind of break. But as soon as you pick that tent up, it's all over. And that's what he's saying is my life is very brief. Just like a shepherd's tent, but a shepherd's tent is even more brief because that herd always has to move to graze. The Bible said in Psalm 102, my days are like a shadow that declineth. I am withered like grass. My days are like a shadow that declineth. You know what this is expressing? is expressing the brevity of my life. Do you live life thinking, okay, my life is very brief? Job said, oh, remember that my life is wind. Do you know wind comes and it goes? It's just there and it's gone. You can't even see it. Whoop, whoop, and it's gone. It really gives you, and you understand, and I understand, that the world's view of man's death is very unique. Mark Twain, and I'm misquoting it, but you can look it up on your own time. Mark Twain said it's a pitiful thing to come to a man's funeral and remember him for a day and forget him for eternity. Isn't that something? A man's whole life is culminated in what is said at his funeral. Hey, and he did that which was right in the sight of the Lord. The kings, all their suffering, all their victories, all their difficulties, all their wonderful times that they had, all their wealth, every bit of it is summarized in one sentence. And he did that which is evil in the sight of the Lord, or he did that which is right in the sight of the Lord. When it boils down to it, our life is very brief, is it not? Yes. So notice when it says the word here in verse 10, I am deprived of the residue of my years. This word residue means excess, superiority, or the remainder. Now, it also says in the Webster's, it makes this statement: that which remains after a part is taken, separated, or removed, or designated. So that which remains after a part is taken. So he is saying, I'm only 39 years old, I had a lot longer to go. The other definition is the balance or the remainder of a debt or an account. He's 39. God comes in and says, get your house in order, you're going to die. Then we know the Bible teaches that he turned his face to the wall and he's praying. It says that here in chapter 38 also, and it says that what we've read in 2 Kings. He's praying and he asks God, God, you help me. You know how I've walked before you in truth. You know what I've done for you. And God answered his prayer and helped him. But here's the thing that I want to focus on tonight very briefly, if I may. The residue of your years. The residue of your years. Well, how does the residue of my years progress? What's the progression? Well, it says it in the verse. Notice what it says. I said in the cutting off of my what? Talk to me. My days. Now, no, I said in the cutting off of my days, I shall go to the gates of the grave. I'm deprived of the residue of my what? Years. Now, years are made up of what? Days. So how it progresses is what the culmination of days is going to bring about the years. Now, you don't believe this, but when you're young, especially, I'm telling you, when you're young, when you think about as you're back on your life, doesn't it seem like yesterday you were like 5 years old? I mean, you go with me illustratively. You understand what I'm saying. But doesn't it seem like yesterday it was 20 years old or 30 years old or 18 years old? But when you're 18, 19, 20, you've been listening to me. My daddy told me something that you need to understand. I might not be any more intelligent than you are, but I've been awake more days than you have, and you need to listen. And I'm talking about young people. Certainly there's people smarter than I am in this room. He told me that at 14 years old. I'll never forget it. I might not be any more intelligent than you are, but I've been awake more days than you have, and you need to listen. I'm not up here trying to tell you something's going to hurt you. I'm trying to tell you something's going to help you. How are you going to get the residue of your years? Well, tell me this. How do you know you're going to live past 22? How do you know you're going to live past 18? How do you know you're going to live past whatever age you are? You don't. How do you know you're not going to die going home tonight? I mean, there's nuts on this road out here, right? How do you know? You don't know that. So how are you going to redeem the residue and get everything out of the residue of what you have left? And here's the thing is, we don't know what we have left. Well, let me give you some suggestions. We better squeeze every drop of life out of every day that we can. Friend, we don't have time for murmuring, complaining, griping, living in sin. You don't have time for that. And I'm talking about a young person. You do not have time for that. I'm especially talking about old people. You know, when we get older, we ought to be sweeter. We ought to be more like Christ. Where's the grumpiness come from? Nobody can stand or be around an old grump. Can't stand it, right? Now, people can't stand to be around a young gossip or an old gossip. Can't stand it, right? You with me? So what we need to do is we need to maximize each day, and we need to squeeze every drop of life on purpose of how I'm going to live my life today. Then I'm going to enjoy my relationship with God. I'm going to enjoy my relationship with my family. I'm going to actually enjoy my relationship with my coworkers. I'm going to enjoy my relationship with those around me, and I'm going to make today prosperous. That's the only way that you're going to be able to get the residue out of your life, because your life is just fleeting away. See, men say tired men rule the world. You know that, right? Tired men rule the world. What does that mean? That means a man's not going to let the daylight. Hey, by the way, I short talked you. I'm sorry. Listen, that means a man is not going to let the sunlight keep on burning. Well, we're going to go to work. Whatever. No, get up and make the day prosperous. Yeah. Christians can apply themselves to living life to the utmost for the glory of God, and we should. I'm going to say that again. Christians can apply themselves to living life to the utmost for the glory of God. So in other words, I can't get ahead of myself. Let me give you the example that we could look at as the Apostle Paul. Look with me in Philippians chapter 3, verse 13. Turn quickly, please. Philippians 3:13. Notice what it says in verse 13. Brethren, I count myself to have apprehended. But this one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forth unto those things which are before. You know what the example is of get the residue out of your life? To soak every bit of life, every drop of life that you can out of a day that God has given you, is that you live. Paul said, this one thing I do. You know what that is? That is focused priorities. Focused priorities. Let me tell you something. It's very hard raising children and helping them, allow them to have different likes without squashing ingenuity. Anybody? Yeah. So you don't want to squash ingenuity, but as a young person, you can be all over the map. Well, as an older person, you can just be all over the map and doing nothing. And so you have to have focused priorities. Paul said, this one thing I do. Let me tell you something. Living for God is a great thing to do. Witnessing to people is a great thing to do. Making sure that your relationship and my relationship with the Lord is right is a good thing to do. And you've got to have focused priorities. It's not about all stuff. It's not about attaining stuff. It's not about attaining money. It's not about attaining fame. It is about that I am going to make sure that my focused priorities are in a spiritual nature. Yeah? Ephesians chapter 6. Look with me in Ephesians chapter 6. Here's another one that we really need to pay attention to, and I'm telling you, you can go all over the place with this one, but this is something we need to keep in mind. Ephesians chapter 6, the verse 10. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Wherefore take unto you the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to stand or withstand in the evil day, having done all to stand. You know what that is? That's the right fight. So you have the right, you have focused priorities, and you have the right fight. You're not going to get involved in a bunch of frays here and a fray there and a fray here and get involved. Hey, listen, what's going on in the country is messed up. I mean, things are messed up. It is messed up, but God's people need to get right with God, and we need to make sure that we're walking with God and that God will intervene and help our nation. We need help. Do we not? Yes. Now, we have to stay on the right fight. There's nothing wrong with we're fighting for this and fighting for that, but you can be so wrapped up in politics that you miss the point of reaching people with the gospel. I was talking to some guys in Mississippi one time, and they're talking about this issue theologically and that issue, and it was peripheral stuff that is important, but it's not the major thing. And I said, brother, let me tell you something. You guys are fighting at a convention that's not even biblical and fighting over stuff that the Bible already tells you what to do and how to act toward that. And you're voting whether something's right or wrong. Meanwhile, people in Mississippi are dying and going to hell, and you're sitting here bickering among yourself. You got to stay on the right fight. Yeah. Just because it's something good don't mean it's God's will. Hello. You got to be a good finisher. Look at me in 2 Timothy chapter 4. 2 Timothy chapter 4. Focus priorities, the right fight, and a finisher. Focus priorities, the right fight, and a finisher. Look at me in 2 Timothy chapter 4, and look at me in verse 7. Matter of fact, go ahead and look up at verse 6. For I am now ready to be offered, and the time of my departure is at hand. I have fought a good fight. I have finished my course. I've kept the faith. You know what he did? He kept the right. He kept his faith. In other words, he's involved in the right fight. You and I need to make sure that we stay involved in the right fight. You can get sidetracked in every area of our lives and get involved in stuff and get engrossed in stuff that's not going to make any difference. Yeah. It may make a small difference, but it's not so much that I need to get entangled with the affairs of this life and not be able to accomplish what God wants me to do as a good soldier of Jesus Christ. What is our focus tonight? Look back with me in the book of Isaiah. The book of Isaiah chapter 38. How do you get the residue? Well, what did Paul do? Paul had the focus priorities. He had stuck in the right fight, and he was a finisher. I have fought a good fight. I have finished my course. I have kept the faith. Now, in the book of Isaiah chapter 38, look back with me in verse 10. So the Bible says, I said, in the cutting off of my days, I shall go to the gates of the grave. I'm deprived of the residue of my years. How am I going to get the residue, the time that God's given me left? I want to tell you something. Today, you better thank God for today. There's a lot of people didn't wake up today. There's a lot of people went to a hospital today. There's a lot of people that were buried today. There's a lot of people that facing all kind of tragedy today. You ought to thank God for His goodness in your life to allow you to breathe today, to allow you to wake up, to allow you to build relationships, to make sure you're in your right relationship with Him and your family and your friends and etc. So what do? You better make today count, and you better get every bit of it out that you can. So then you walk circumspectly, not as fools, redeeming the time because the days are evil. I've told you this 100 times. How do you redeem time when time is a continuum? It just keeps on going, keeps on. You have to buy it back in advance. You have to buy it back in advance. This is when I study the Bible. This is when I'm going to do such and such. This is when I'm going to do this. We're going to talk about that next week, about living on a schedule. You need to have a schedule. You can't just ramble through life. You have to have things, and you have to buy it back in advance. How are you going to get, I'm going to give you 2 illustrations. How are you going to get the residue out of what you have left from where you are today? Do you know does anyone know if you're going to be living tomorrow? Well, don't you think that we ought to look at today and say, well, I better get the best out of this that I can. Hey, by the way, those of you that are mean to one another, don't let your last memories of you be of one that's mean. That is ungodly, wicked, vile, rotten, terrible. Terrible. Be nice. When I was a little boy, I lived 13 steps away from my grandmother's house. I loved that lady. I love both my grandmothers, but I lived closest to my dad's mother. Her name is Mary Elizabeth. What a godly woman. But that dear sweet saint could cook. And I'm telling you something, she had me over there as a little boy making gingerbread cookies, making sugar cookies, making all this kind of, oh, it was good. And then, we'd put the little, a dent in a gingerbread snap cookie and put a little water in it, make it chewy, but you know, some people like them crunchy. So good. But my grandmother, and I've never, what do you call them? Quaker bacon, what's a cake mix now today? Bakers, Quakers, something? Quakers, bakers? I don't know. I don't bake cakes. Anyway, listen to this, Doc. She can make a cake batter out of scratch, and I've never tasted anything tasted like that. Never tasted any cake that tasted like that. We down south we call it pound cake. What do you call it? Pound cake. Okay, all right. So that's what you call it in America, pound cake. So my grandmother make this pound cake from scratch. And so guess what she would do when she poured it out? She poured it out. She put it in the pan, and then guess what she'd do? She'd stick it in the oven, and then guess what she'd do with the rest of the stuff? The spoon and the bowl. Me. Now, you've done it, but you ain't ever eaten no Quaker baked stuff tastes like that. What is it called? Betty Crocker? So anyway, she would stir that stuff up, hand me the bowl, and son, I'd go to town. I have never, ever tasted anything taste like that except I'd get the spoon out and I'd get every bit of residue I could. And when I was little, I had a smaller head. And my head would fit in the bowl. I won't tell you what I did in that bowl. I don't want to make you disgusted, but I got every bit of that cake mix out that I could. And you know what? You didn't even have to wash the bowl when I was done. No, that's not true. Oh, but my grandmother also knew how to get we'll call them leftovers is what we call them, but we'll say residue for the illustration of the message. She knew how to get the residue out of the homemade rolls, brother. Do you know you could smell those? You could smell those homemade rolls all the way to my house. The odor would just whiff over, and the rest of us would start walking over. And we would sit down and eat, and when we would eat, we ate as a family. We'd eat, sit there and eat. And then in the South, what we do, in Brother Carlisle, I don't mean Tennessee. I'm talking about southern Mississippi. We would get, that's an inside joke. So anyway, we would go over and we would drink coffee in the evening. Did you do that with your family? We'd sit and drink coffee. Everybody came over, would sit down and drink coffee. Well, my grandmother wasn't satisfied to let them rolls just go to the next day. She'd slice them rolls, and then she'd put butter on them. Then she'd put sugar on them. Then she'd put cinnamon on them, stick them in the oven, and make sweet rolls out of them that would make you just slap your knee with happiness. It was good, man. And we got every bit of it out of the residue of what was left over. He said, the residue of my years. You're not deprived of the residue of your years unless you waste them. That's right. You know what I need to do in life with what I have left? I need to stick my head in the bowl and lick every bit of life out of it that I can get every day of my life, because the days is what makes up the years. And the years go by like pew, 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 pew. And all of a sudden you're thinking, wow, in 26 years I'm going to be 80. I'm going to be 80 in 26 years. I told a woman yesterday, I said, ma'am, the older you get, you have to really consider about planting trees. You can plant them, but you ain't ever going to see them grow up. And you live life like you got all day long and go about just drifting through life. And we'll talk about that next week. Every head bowed, every eye closed.